You think you had a bad day at work? Try being a Roman legionary, because if you messed up, I mean even a little bit, they didn't write you up, they didn't dock your pay, they beat you, sometimes to death, and sometimes they made your best friend do it. The Roman army was the most disciplined fighting force the ancient world had ever seen. But that discipline? It wasn't earned through motivation or team-building exercises. It was beaten into men with sticks, stones, and sheer terror. The Romans had one philosophy when it came to military discipline. You should fear your own officers more than you fear the enemy. And they meant it. Let's talk about what really happened when a Roman soldier stepped out of line. The centurion's stick. Every morning in the Roman army started the same way. You woke up before dawn, you moved when you were told, and you kept your head down because your centurion was watching, and in his hand a 3-foot vine stick called the Vitis. That stick wasn't for decoration, it was for you. The ancient writer Pliny described the centurion's vine stick as an excellent medicine for sluggish troops who don't want to advance. Medicine. That's what they called beating the living daylights out of you. Minor infractions got you a taste of the Vitis. Showed up late for roll call. That's a beating. Didn't polish your armor properly. Beating. Moved too slow during drill. You guessed it. These centurions would crack that stick across your back, your shoulders, your ribs, and you were expected to take it without flinching. If you grabbed that stick or tried to fight back, that was punishable by death. There was a centurion in the 1st century named Lucilius who became so infamous for his beatings that his own men gave him a nickname, Gimme Another. Why? Because he broke his vine stick so often across soldiers' backs that he was constantly yelling for a replacement. Think about how hard you have to hit a man to snap a solid wooden rod across his body. Now imagine doing it so often that your troops start calling you by that phrase. The soldiers hated Lucilius so much that when a mutiny broke out in Pannonia in 14 AD, he was one of the first men they killed. They didn't just want him dead, they wanted him dead first. But here's the thing, that kind of daily violence was considered normal, expected. If you were a Roman legionary, getting beaten was just part of the job. The real punishments? Those were much, much worse. Sleeping on watch. Let's say you pulled guard duty. You're standing there in the middle of the night, freezing, exhausted from a 20-mile march, and your eyes start to close. Just for a second. Just a brief moment of rest. If the patrol found you asleep, you were dead. Not figuratively, literally. The ancient historian Polybius described exactly what happened. The next morning you'd be dragged before a military tribunal. A tribune would touch you with a reed, just a light tap, and then step back. That was the signal. Every man in your unit would pick up clubs and stones, and they would beat you to death. Right there, in front of everyone. The Romans called this Fustuarium, and there was no escape. Polybius tells us that even if a man somehow survived and managed to crawl away, he was forbidden from ever returning to Rome. No family member could take him in. If your own mother gave you food or shelter, she'd be punished. You were a walking corpse, a ghost, dead to everyone you'd ever loved for the rest of your miserable life. And this wasn't rare. This was standard procedure. Fall asleep on watch, lose the password tablet, abandon your post for any reason. Fustuarium. Your own friends, the men you'd trained with, the men you'd bled with, would pick up rocks and clubs and end your life while the entire legion watched in silence. This wasn't just about punishing the guilty man. This was about sending a message to every other soldier watching. You think you're tired. You think you want to close your eyes for just a second. Look at your friend's body on the ground. That's what happens. The shame of Barley. Not every punishment killed you. Some were designed to break you in a different way, through humiliation. Roman soldiers ate wheat. Good, clean Roman wheat that they ground into porridge or baked into bread. But barley was animal feed. It was what you gave to horses and mules. To the Romans, eating barley meant you were no better than a beast. So when a unit showed cowardice or failed in battle, the survivors weren't just beaten. They were put on barley rations day after day, eating food fit for livestock while their comrades ate real meals. And they weren't allowed to sleep inside the camp walls. They had to pitch their tents outside, unprotected, where enemy raids could hit them first. Imagine spending weeks eating animal food, sleeping in danger, watching your former tent mates go about their lives while you're treated like dirt. All because your unit ran when it should have stood firm. The Romans understood something about human psychology. Sometimes the shame of survival was worse than a quick death. Decimation. Killing your own brothers. And then there was decimation. The word literally means removal of a tenth. And it was exactly as horrifying as it sounds. When an entire unit broke and ran, when hundreds or thousands of men showed cowardice, the Romans couldn't execute them all. They needed those soldiers, but they couldn't let it go unpunished either. So they invented something worse. Here's how it worked. The disgraced unit would be assembled and divided into groups of 10. Then each group drew lots, straws, stones, whatever was available. 9 men would live. 1 would die. And here's the nightmare part. The 9 survivors had to kill him, their own tent mate, their own brother in arms. They beat him to death with clubs and stones while the rest of the army watched. Think about that for a second. You've fought beside this man. You've shared meals with him. You've saved each other's lives in battle. Maybe he has a wife back home, kids. Maybe he was the one who carried you when you were wounded. And now, because of a lottery, because a random straw was shorter than the others, you have to cave in his skull with a wooden club. While he screams, while he begs, while he calls out your name, while he asks you to please make it quick. And if you refused, if you couldn't bring yourself to do it, then you'd be next. The whole point was that no one was safe. The lots didn't care if you were brave or cowardly. They didn't care if you ran first or stood your ground until the last second. Innocent men died alongside the guilty. That was the point. That was what made it so terrifying. The Roman general Crassus revived this punishment during the slave rebellion led by Spartacus. His men had fled from battle, and Crassus was furious. Historical accounts suggest somewhere between 50 and 4,000 men were executed through decimation under his command. The survivors had to watch their friends die, then face the barley rations, the exile from camp, the crushing shame. It worked. Those same soldiers who had run from Spartacus fought like demons in the next battle, not because they loved Rome, because they were more terrified of Crassus than they were of any slave army. Mark Antony used it too. After a humiliating defeat against the Parthians, so he decimated his legions. The Greek historian Plutarch recorded his rage. Antony divided the whole lot of them into groups of 10 and put to death that one from each 10 upon whom the lot fell. For the rest, he ordered rations of barley instead of wheat. Decimation didn't happen often. It couldn't because you were literally killing 10% of your experienced fighting force. But the threat of it hung over every Roman soldier's head. Any major failure, any mass cowardice, and you might find yourself drawing lots with your closest friends. The flagrum. If you were a slave who had been conscripted into the Roman army, and by the later empire, many soldiers were, you faced an even more brutal form of punishment. The flagrum. This wasn't a simple whip. The flagrum was a short-handled scourge with multiple leather straps, and at the end of each strap were small metal hooks or bones. When it struck your bare back, those hooks would sink into your flesh. When the torturer pulled the whip back for another stroke, those hooks tore chunks of meat off your body. A few strokes would leave you scarred for life. Enough strokes would kill you slowly as your back was literally torn to pieces. The system behind the brutality. Here's what you need to understand about Roman military punishment. It wasn't random cruelty. It wasn't sadism for its own sake. It was calculated, systematic, designed to achieve one specific goal: absolute obedience. The Roman military machine conquered most of the known world because every single soldier in that army understood one fundamental truth. If you followed orders, you might die in battle. But if you disobeyed orders, if you ran, if you slept on watch, if you showed cowardice, you would definitely suffer something worse than death. The legionary was supposed to fear his own camp more than he feared any enemy. And that fear bound hundreds of thousands of men together across centuries into the most effective fighting force the ancient world had ever seen. It was brutal, it was merciless, and it built an empire. Legacy. The Roman system of military punishment didn't die with Rome. Generals throughout history have looked back at these methods when discipline broke down. During World War I, both the Italian and French armies used decimation against units that refused to fight. As late as the 20th century, men were being chosen by lottery and shot by their own comrades, just like their Roman predecessors 2,000 years before. The Romans believed that discipline was the soul of an army. Without it, you just had a mob with weapons, and they were willing to do absolutely anything: beat their own soldiers, execute innocent men by lottery, strip away every shred of human dignity to maintain that discipline. It's easy to look back and call them monsters, but those monsters conquered the Mediterranean. They built roads that lasted 2,000 years. They created an empire that shaped the entire Western world, and they did it by making sure every single soldier understood. In the Roman army, there was no punishment too brutal for failure. If you made it this far, I appreciate you. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and drop a like to let me know you want more content like this. Until next time.